Welcome to The Hype Within, exploring journeys of authentic leadership and growth. On the show, tech leaders will share their stories of developing their leadership skills and challenges they faced along the way. You'll learn about their approaches to self-reflection and personal growth, and how they've been able to build a foundation of authenticity that has propelled them to success. I'm your host, Hannah Jacover, B2B marketing leader turned leadership and executive coach. Are you ready to get hyped up? Let's dive in. Hey leaders, welcome back. I am here today with Lindsay Tjepkema, who is the CEO and co-founder of Casted. Hi Lindsay, how are you doing today?
Hello, Hannah. I am fantastic. I'm excited to be here with you. We're going to get into some fun stuff.
I know, I'm excited too. And I love having marketing leaders on, especially marketing leaders that have turned into founders and CEOs, because you are probably used to talking about marketing all the time or being a founder all of the time. And on this show, you get to talk about, an aspect of that, but really leadership journey and people and culture. And I always just think it's so fun to pick that side of your brain.
Yeah. And you know what that's like too. You've made similar transition, and it's, I am biased, of course, but I think that marketers make great business leaders because of all of the storytelling and the awareness that we have of you have to go tell them what you're going to tell them, and you have to tell them 50 times, and they have to tell them what you told them, and you appreciate the value of communication. So yeah.
I would love if you could kick us off by just giving us a little bit of a peek into your journey. You were a marketer at a few different organizations, and then you became a SaaS founder and first-time CEO. So that's a big journey, and I would love to hear all about that, the steps and the inspiration behind that transition.
Yes, as you said, marketer. I'm a marketer. I have been for 20 years. I'm one of the nerds that when I went to school, I actually went to school for graphic design and music is what I thought I wanted to do. And very quickly learned, somebody mentioned something to me that led me to marketing. And ever since, that's been my one and only thing. It's always been B2B. I've worked at large companies and small companies and agencies and corporate. And I just love the creativity and the connection, the ability to really be that connective tissue between a brand and its audience. So that's been me. That's been my passion for decades now, which is crazy. And then I never had any intention of becoming a founder. I never saw myself as a CEO. It wasn't an aspiration. I had a problem that I was talking to an investor about because they were thinking about kind of solving a B2B podcasting problem. They had some ideas, and I was like, look, if you're going to do it, here's some things. And the more I heard myself talking, the more I heard myself really talking about something I was really passionate about and have never stopped being passionate about, as far as how I see the future of B2B marketing going. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it, and I couldn't walk away from it, and I couldn't let somebody else sit in this seat, literally and figuratively. So in a nutshell, that's kind of how I got here.
Very cool. Yeah, that once you see it, you can't unsee it, that little voice, and it you can try to ignore it, but it does not go away until you do something about it.
That's actually, and I've talked about this before, but people are like, well, what made you decide to do it? And I was like, well, it wasn't so much deciding to do it. It was the realization, I couldn't not do it, and how I would feel if somebody else did it instead, and going the rest of my life having not walked this path, or at least tried. And so I in short, maybe FOMO, YOLO. I don't know what that is, but it was like you said, once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I had to go kind of figure it out on my own.
Yeah. Well, and clearly there's a market for it and people love it. So congratulations on that.
Thanks. Yeah. I think that's, if you do step into an entrepreneurial role, if you're solving a problem that you yourself have actually had, that really helps, because you know what it's like to not have a solution or not have an adequate solution for something that's really plaguing you in your life. So here we are.
Yeah. And how many, well, I guess I'll step back, since you've kind of been in and out of many different organizations. What is your favorite size of organization?
Oh gosh, that's really tough. I love the scrappiness and the not so much scrappy. Scrappy's hard, but nimble. I love the ability to be nimble in a smaller organization, like less than 50, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because something needs to be done, you just do it. You literally just do it. Sometimes just by yourself in an afternoon, a thing needs to happen and it just gets done.
Yeah.
There's a lot of more direct access to different parts of the business, to leadership, to customers. But on the flip side, larger organizations, although they can't be as nimble, the resources are pretty incredible. And once you've worked at a company that has more resources and the ability to go make a thing, to travel to the place, to create the thing, to hold the meeting, to host the event, it's pretty special to be able to assemble a global team of multifaceted roles and expertise to be able to pull something together like a major global conference or something like that. So, but you asked me my favorite. I think maybe I'm biased because I'm in it right now, but I think less than 50 is pretty special because you can just move fast and try things and just get really creative.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, where is Casted at now? So it sounds like it's right under 50 mark.
Yep. We're less than 50. We're about 20. And yeah, we're able to move fast. We're able to really work together and not worry too much about some of the issues that can plague a much larger organization about like who does what and how are we going to do this and how are we going to account for that, and if we do this and it impacts this, you just move fast. You just keep moving. You get really creative, and people are eager to jump together because everyone in the organization knows that what they're doing matters and that their presence and their purpose and their focus makes a difference.
Yeah, that's huge. It's like that personal connection. And I think that's what helps also build a really solid culture too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in a large organization, you can end up feeling like, or you can have people on your team that feel like what they're doing doesn't fully matter. You know, if I really show up today, is it actually going to matter? If I don't, is it going to matter? You have people that go out on leave, does it matter? And will anybody miss me? And in a small organization, you absolutely feel it. You feel it when your teammates lean in and lean out. You feel it when you accomplish something big. You feel it when you go after it. And people, there's, like you said, there's this connection. And I think it's much more, it feels like one entity kind of moving together, which is pretty special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember just like the visibility too. You have, if you're a young marketer, you know, or young in any role, you have so much visibility to pretty much whoever you want. And you got to take advantage of that for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's actually something worth pointing out is if you are in a small organization, especially now where things are so strapped, things are so tight, and there's so much pressure to do more with less, remember the flip side of that is that you will have so much more opportunity and so much more visibility and so much more access to leadership and to whatever resources you do have. And again, you have the opportunity to just dive in, try things, and see if you can make a difference in a time that it can be really easy to feel really stressed, really pressured, really discouraged. Take a minute and think about the ways that you want to make an impact, things that you think would be really fun and fulfilling and energizing that you think could make a difference. Because now more than ever in a small organization, you have that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love you for already giving out great tips. Where 10 minutes in, it's the best.
It's what we're here to do.
Yes. So tell me a little bit about your leadership style today and how that has evolved over time.
Gosh, I feel like you'd have to ask people I work with. But I think one thing that's always been really, really important to me is such an overused word, but authenticity. I feel like everybody's saying, using that word now, and it's actually become jaded and very inauthentic. But transparency, authenticity, approachability, and candor and passion. I think those things combined, if you don't have that, it's really, for me, it seems really hard to gain the buy-in, gain the trust, have people meet you at your passion if you don't show up that way. If people don't feel like they can like they're going to get honesty or they're going to get transparency from you, why would they give it to you? And I just can't help but be me, So I think it's just kind of what you see is what you get with me, which I will say can be tough. And anyone who can relate to what I just said and is like, yeah, that's me too. I don't know if feedback that I've gotten when people hold up a mirror to me, I don't know that people always know what to do with that. Mm-hmm. Like, I think we're kind of raised to believe that people aren't going to be fully forthright with you. People aren't going to be totally honest with you. People aren't going to be really authentic with you. And so I think that when you show up that way, you have to expect that your authenticity might be met with skepticism, because people don't always, like, we haven't been raised to believe in our culture, in our society, broadly speaking, that people are going to be fully transparent. People are going to be as honest as they possibly can. And so I think that can feel tough. That can feel kind of lonely sometimes as a leader who is trying every day, not to spin things and not to filter things, but to be like, hey, this is who I am. This is where we are. This is what's happening. People will be like, is it though? So that can be interesting.
Yeah, I'm really glad you went there with that, because I mean, it's so true. Being authentic is challenging because of that. And when you kind of go through the journey of really, like, for me, I think of it as coming home to yourself, right? Remembering who you are and then being able to like showcase that to the world and live that externally as well as internally. And that's a hard journey. And through that journey, you also lose a lot of people because you learn to set boundaries. You learn to stick to your values. You learn what you need as a human to like have that self-love, that compassion, that rest, and whatever you need to not burn out. And that process, it is very lonely because people don't like it. If you haven't been that way your whole life and then all of a sudden you evolve into that person, you remove access to parts of you. Even though you're being more open about it, you still have these like pretty hardcore boundaries and you lose people. You do. And it can be very lonely. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because authenticity is one of those words that you're right. Like, it gets thrown around all the time, and a word is just a word. Everybody has their own definition of authenticity, and you got to have some meaning behind it.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think quite often people will, especially marketers, we were talking about marketers and good, bad, or otherwise, do we make good leaders? And I think when you've been a marketer for a really long time, as you and I have been in past lives, you adapt. Like you that's literally the job, is producing the messaging that is needed for the situation, right? And to understand your audience and therefore meet them where they are with the solutions and the messaging and the brand that will be most effective. If you're not careful, and this has happened to me, and if you're not really careful, that can turn into who you are as a leader, is showing up for what and it can hide as, there's a fine line between that and situational leadership, right? It can feel like, oh, I'm being a situational leader and I'm adapting for this situation. But if you're not careful, you can be whoever that situation needs you to be. And you can get kind of swept up in a whirlwind of, where do I need to go and what does this need to be? As opposed to, like you said, coming home to yourself, boldly being yourself, being authentic. Some people will like it, some people won't. But that's what people need. That's what businesses need. That's what investors and board members need. That's what the team needs, is for you to be steady and forthright, even if it feels at times strange, because people, like you said, people aren't used to it.
I'm curious, for you, what did that journey look like? And some people are just always authentic throughout their lives, and that's just kind of how their posture is. And I commend those people, right, to be able to just like hold on to that forever. But most of us do not. Most of us are that way as a child, and then we're socialized and pushed into, the world where we're molded, and we lose that spark. When did you come home to yourself?
Gosh, I think it's a constant. I don't know if you ever, like, it's not like you walk in the front door and you're like, I'm here. Because life will continue to like push you out and be like, go away.
Yeah.
It's so funny that you said that. Yep. Start as a little girl. I actually had a talk on it one time where I was so sure of myself as a child, and I was very dramatic, very big personality, and very outspoken, and very comfortable in who I was. And like you said, through school and through jobs and, teachers and bosses, peers, colleagues, just little pieces get chipped away. And, something that you should be confident in, one little comment can pull you back from leaning in, and vice versa. Like behaviors that aren't really you get reinforced, positive reinforcement of like, oh yeah, that time that you were less than, that time that you shrank down, that time that you were less yourself, that was great. Do more of that, please. So that was absolutely part of my story. And I think leading up to Casted and then stepping into this role has definitely been a big part of that, constant awareness and choice to continually, as you said, come home, or as I say all the time, like boldly be yourself. Because I'm a mom, I have 3 kids, and I have this team, and I have investors, and I have friends, and I don't know when it happened, but somewhere along the way, it was like, this isn't just for me. Like all of these people, these kids and my family and my friends and these, business people all need me to be me. So if not for me, if not because it feels good to be me sometimes, then make that choice every single day to show up for me, for them, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, yeah, totally. And that's a journey. It's not like you said, you can't just open the door and be like, all right, I'm chilling now. And
I have arrived.
Yeah. Sometimes it looks like that externally, I will say, when you show up and you figure out how to use your voice, right? It can look like that. But the people that have come home and are in that process, they are still working through things every single day, like you said.
Yep.
What strategies do you have in place to move through that successfully?
So anyone who has been trying to get me to have quiet time, who may or may be listening to this ever, will laugh audibly to this, but I think quiet time and stillness, and I am such a doer. I am such like an achiever. Any personality thing, like I'm Enneagram 3 and I'm a high D on the disc, and in the like know your strengths, I'm an achiever. Like every single thing, it's like do. And so for me, I was trying to squeeze it for years, like high stress, even before becoming a founder, like just constantly towing the line of burnout, just pushing harder. And, people that I would be like, why am I so stressed? They're like, you need to relax. You need to have quiet time. You need to sit alone with your thoughts and pray, meditate, like do those things. And I was like, yeah. I do that in my car on the way to work. And it's like, no, it's not the same. And finally, when I finally did that, and it's a little piece here and it's a little piece there, and it's once a month and then it's once a week and then it's, most of the week and then it's every day. That's a game changer for me. Like taking the time to sit alone in quiet for a decent amount of time with your thoughts. For me, it's journaling and reading and just really getting intentional about like things that sound so simple and possibly even like trite or cute or woo-woo, like until you actually do it, like asking myself questions and like asking myself how I feel about something and like asking myself about what's stressing me out and then really getting curious about that, asking myself what has me excited, really getting curious about that, asking myself how I can get more of what makes me happy and what brings me joy into my life every single day. And at first that it can actually feel overwhelming because it gives way to your to-do list. It's like, okay, great, cool. Now I know exactly what I want to do and I can't, which is really frustrating. But the more you do that, and it's not like I'm there. Like we were just talking about arriving. Like I am not there. It's not like I live there, not even a long shot. But I mean, just having more awareness of just who you are and what serves you and how you can best serve others in your business, in a leadership example, it does begin to actually impact your day-to-day decisions, what you delegate, what you hold on to, what you say yes to, what you say no to, what you say yes to, but put boundaries around. And it has to, there is no silver bullet. There is no, easy button. It's a practice. It's an ongoing long-term practice.
I completely agree. Like so many of the things that you said resonate. And I don't know how many interviews I've done on this show so far, but maybe like 20. And everybody says this. Everybody says this. I have learned it as well. It was a big departure from my personality or what I thought was my personality, and I had to completely readjust my life at that point. And like, I had to tell my husband, like, I need this amount of alone time so I can process, so I can be present in my body, so I can learn what I'm okay with and what I'm not okay with. And I mean, even still, I need more. I will take all the alone time I can get just to get to that point of you're centered, you're regulated. Regulating your nervous system is so incredibly important. I'm convinced this is the key to life. I am.
It's so true. And we'll just go ahead, Hannah. We'll just fix the world because I mean, we're not, especially as women. I'm not a man, but I think there's your own set of challenges as a man. But like, I think especially as a woman, like you're raised to, so many of us had the gift of being told we could do it all, which is awesome. But then there's this pressure to do it all. And then there's this guilt for ever stopping, forever taking a second, forever taking a minute. And, you know, you add other people in your life that need you, whether it's personally or professionally. And there's kind of this like, how dare you? Silence, alone time. That's cute. But it's the people who have known this for years. Like, there's a reason that like you said, people keep talking about it, because once you do that, you're better. You're a better leader. You're a better person. You're healthier. You're a better friend. You don't need vices. You sleep better. Like it's real. And it's hard because nobody can do it for you. Nobody can like tell you to do it. You really have to kind of come to that realization on your own and just keep at it until you start to see the outcomes that you and I are talking about.
Yeah, there's so many benefits. And sometimes people are skeptical, especially more seasoned executives who maybe come from different generations. But if I can get the people to just be inspired, you know, if I can have a couple of my clients be inspired to just put their baby toe into that pool and realize what the introspection can bring them, like then I've done my job. But this process of introspection, this process of becoming, and all of the things that you do to get there, I just feel like it has such a terrible, terrible label. You know, people look at it as, I don't have time for that. It's so woo-woo. You know, it's too spiritual or whatever. And I know how I'm trying to move people past that, but do you bump into that at all? Just kind of like talking with other founders or execs?
Yes and no. So I have a lot of support for just this holistically. Everything that you and I are talking about, I was the one out of like all of the people in my life who everybody was trying to get to slow down. Like, you know, so I have a lot of that in my life. However, I think that there is some pushback, generally speaking, like in work, right? So whether it's from your leaders, from those that you might report to or roll up to or be responsible to or accountable to, I think that that's lagging a little bit because everyone is still expected to worship the altar of hustle and grind. And that if you're not, especially the higher up you get in leadership, you better be giving everything. And somehow that giving everything still, to a lot of people, translates to hustle and grind. So I've been really fortunate. Like I said, people have kind of been dragging me along to get to the place that I am now. But I do think really broadly speaking, like sometimes I'll talk to other founders or other business leaders, and I don't think that they perceive to have the same amount of support or flexibility or encouragement to ask themselves how they're doing and to slow down. And you can really see it when somebody doesn't have access to it. So I think we're getting there. I think that obviously, I mean, you look around and the conversations are much more present now than they ever have been before, as far as how do we take care of ourselves and our mental health and our own well-being so that we can show up well for others. But we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, agreed. I have a talk on productivity, and it's one of my favorite topics, but I have to start out by getting people to reframe the way that they look at productivity, because all of this, in my personal humble opinion, is a product of capitalism and shrinking us down to productivity is all about your output, all about the bottom line. when in reality, we really need to think about productivity as a means for our own well-being so we can not burn out, so we can still do the
Yeah.
things that we need to do without burning out. So it then allows you to take this like really holistic view of productivity. And it's not just about the like getting up at 6 and time blocking your day and, using AI.
Yeah.
Like that is a piece of it. But what about your brain? What about your body?
Mhm.
What about all of the things that are actually needed to do those things? And so
Right.
it's one of my favorite topics to talk about because I think it directly ties to this. If we can get people to make that shift around what it means to be productive, then
Yes.
maybe we can start having this conversation a little bit more often.
Yeah. Because to be creative, you need space. You just do. And one of the first things when we enter into a scarcity mindset where there's fear and anxiety and stress and pressure, the first things to go are creativity and connection. You withdraw from others because you don't have time to connect with other people and you don't have the luxury of being creative. And so then we basically turn into robots and wonder why we're so unhappy. And our productivity, even if the output in volume is there, the output in quality is not.
Mhm.
And I think more and more people are getting it, but we got a long way to go.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, like, you got to get out of your beta brainwave state. And they're like, what does that mean? But it's true. We walk around in this like beta brainwave state that is actually linked to stress and anxiety and not good for making it's maybe good for making decisions because you're a little bit more alert, but it's not good for being creative. It's not good for connecting deeply. Like it's not good for 90% of the things that we actually need to be doing during the day. And so, yeah.
And I think to be clear, like so many people, humans want to make things black and white, like right, wrong, yes, no, off, on, light, dark, black, white. And it's not hustle and grind or naps. It's not napping during the day or working yourself to the bone. Like, I mean, I lead a startup and we have a big mountain to climb always. 100% of the time, we have a lot of work to do. And so I need to show up, and I'm not saying I'm always good at this. Like I am guilty of a lot of things, a lot of like not what we're saying, like overworking and undersleeping and not taking care of myself. But to be able to show up and push hard, you have to be fueled. You can't expect IndyCar to they stop and they go to the pit and they get replaced and they refuel and they replace their tires and they're trying to win a big race. The only way to do it is to stop, refuel, and then keep pushing. It doesn't mean just stopping and staying in the pit and I don't care, somebody else will win. Somebody else will win it for me. But it also doesn't mean just going until you literally fall apart.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. You can do both, but you still have to do the work. And on both sides, internally and externally. And yeah, it's so true. For that reason, for my own schedule, I work in sprints. I do 2 weeks on, 1 week off, where it's 1 week of pretty low key, more creative work, not a lot of meetings, days where I just honestly have to take the afternoon, be in bed and rest. And then the other 2 weeks are the hustle. I'm working really hard. My day is full of meetings. Also, we're moms, right? So we only have a certain amount of time during the day. So I'm up late working. It is a balance of doing both of those things. But the thing is you can't just show up and hope for things. You can't just show up and be like, I'm going to visualize this life that it's just going to come to me. You have to actually put yourself in the mindset and you actually have to do the work. You have to put yourself in the right places. You have to build the right connections. You have to be doing and focused on the right things in order for that to come to you. If you can do that, then maybe it will come to you, but hope is not a strategy, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that in the effort to raise the volume on self-care, mental health awareness, which are both very, very, very important things. That's what we've been talking about. So you and I have been talking about most of this conversation. I think that the do the work part doesn't always get as much attention because it's like, well, but take care of yourself. It's like, and so you can do the work personally and professionally. It's like if you want to reach goals, you want to do big things. you got to take care of yourself, and then you got to do the work. And then you have to take care of yourself and find a rhythm that works, that is sustainable and rewarding and lets you pour into others too.
Absolutely. Nailed it. Okay, let's move on a little bit, although I could talk about that all day, honestly.
I think we're both passionate about it. Yeah.
Yes, which I love. I'm a huge advocate for women in leadership, women CEOs, women getting funding. Like, we need more of that. And I'm sure you have big opinions on that as well, being a woman who is a CEO in the tech industry. But what is your experience fostering women in leadership within your organization? How do you take that personal passion and let it translate out into the external for your team, for your people, like whoever's in that circle?
Yeah. I think a lot of it is kind of a variation of what we've been talking about. It's authenticity, and it's encouraging others to be authentic too, right? And creating a space where we can be ourselves and be celebrated for who we are, because we've all heard so many of the situations and stories where so many very senior women have had to, or at least felt like they've had to, basically act like men to get anywhere, to get funding, to get a seat at the table, to get heard. And I think once you are in, and I've been there, be less, be more, do all these things differently, be someone else. And so I think when you finally get into an opportunity where you have some sort of leadership, and leadership doesn't necessarily mean, like, as like, it doesn't mean being a CEO. It doesn't mean necessarily leading a team. If you have any amount of influence, regardless of who you are, if you have the opportunity to lead in any way, use it to allow people to show up as themselves, to make it safe, to give feedback on what people are doing, not who they are, and to create space for differences of opinion, for actual diversity. And I think that goes a lot farther than we think, letting people be themselves and lifting up those voices that need some amplification. When you have any amount of opportunity to do that, whether it's hiring someone or appointing someone to your board or having someone on a podcast, use every single opportunity to widen the pool, to bring more voices in. And then once they're there, let them be themselves. It's so easy to fall into the trap of like, oh, well, this is what a leader looks like. This is what a leader sounds like. This is what someone in this role should know. This is what someone in this role should do. It's like, is it? Or is that just what we have believed all this time? Like, if you have someone different in that seat, they're going to sit in that seat differently. Let them. And if they need coaching, get it for them. If they need some guidance, get it. If they need some feedback, deliver it. Yeah, just make the space and then hold it.
Yes. I mean, I think it's a great perspective. I obviously agree. And it's one reason too why I think we're in for some shakeup when it comes to leadership in itself, because I mean, look at the way that Gen Z postures themselves. They are being raised by a generation, for the most part, that if you're a millennial raising somebody who's in Gen Z, you are a little bit more tuned to that self-work, I think, and breaking some of those generational curses, like healing your trauma. And those are the children we're raising. So now you see these and Gen Z, like, they're, adults, but, when they're coming to the workplace, they are very clear about what they want, who they are, how they're going to do things, how they're not going to do things. And I think you're right. Like, let someone challenge the status quo. Let someone challenge the oppressive systems that you maybe can't see because you are stuck in it, right? And they maybe are in a different position where they've been able to remove themselves and see it for themselves, outside of themselves, rather. But yeah, I think that
100%.
What you said about just letting them be themselves once they get there. Don't try to mold. Don't try to push things on somebody who is perfectly wonderful as they are.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. Like, when you are leading someone, remember that as their leader, you are there to help them grow, not change, right? And so often, I kind of breezed over this just a minute ago, but I'm sure you have too. I've received feedback on who I am, not on what I'm doing or like the work that I'm doing. Like, hey, you could do this differently. When you submitted this thing, it could have been better in this way. Cool. Not like you are to this, like you are. And like just catch yourself, before you do that. It's because those are the things that stay with us. Those are the things that make it really difficult for us to show up authentically when people tell us that we aren't who we should be, as opposed to, hey, the work that you're doing could be better if you made these changes to your work, to your output, to how you're approaching your work, not who you are. And yeah, challenging how people need to show up and what it means to be professional and what it means to be a leader and what it means to be, insert title here. Just, holding that space and letting people show up as themselves in that role and helping them. And that also doesn't mean, like, kind of going back to what we said before, you still have to do the work. That doesn't mean that when you show up first day on your first professional job ever, you have a lot to learn and you have a lot of growing to do. And that's hard. Like holding on to who you are, but still growing as a professional. That's important. That's really, really important. And it can be tough to lead, but that's the opportunity we have as leaders.
Yeah, I would say too, like if you ever notice that you're drifting away from who you are and how you're growing professionally, pause before it gets too late and just take the time to recenter for sure. I'm glad you brought up feedback because I was going to ask about that, how you handle feedback, which I think is a fantastic topic. I was just thinking about while you were talking, here you are talking about feedback, talking about being your authentic self, and you have a company, right? There's 30 people and there's leaders within that. And I think I know what you're going to say, but have you ever been in situations where you meet the leader of a company, you meet the CEO and you're like, oh, love them, love their style, love what they stand for. And then you start to meet some of the team and it's like, wait a second, this doesn't align with what I noticed about the CEO and the values that I would kind of expect to trickle down into the organization. So I'm curious, as a CEO, how do you approach making sure that the company culture and the values that are treasured and sacred, how do you make sure that that's how other people are showing up as well?
Yeah, it's tough. It's really hard, especially the bigger you get and when you go through challenges, when you go through harder times, it can be really, really hard. And that's, like I said before, way earlier in the conversation, being your authentic self as a leader and showing up and reiterating the values and trying to live the values, as far as I can tell, it's the best way. It's not a surefire. There are going to be people who agree and people who disagree, and the best thing that you can do is just keep showing up. Just keep showing up. Just keep living the values. Make sure that the values are not something that you were backed into or that somebody else said should be a good idea. I mean, if you're leading a company, they have to be true to who you are as a person. And it's this fine balance of like, who am I and what are my values? And also, what are the values of this company? Because at the end of the day, like, you are the number one representation of living them out, right? So I think we are in the midst of challenging times for a lot of businesses. And I think that there are probably a lot of leaders that are going through what you just said. And all I can say is just keep showing up. Relationships, one-on-one relationships with everybody on the team to the extent that you can, so that they know that authenticity and that the values that you're working to portray are real. It's not lip service. It's not a show. It's truly who you are. Helping people to see that, helping people to believe in you and in the path forward and in your vision. That is, like we were talking about, waking up every day, and it's a choice. Same thing. It's just keep showing up every single day and being vocal and living the values and providing examples and calling out others who are, and making sure that you're turning the light and you're shining the spotlight on those who are excellent representations of the company and of the culture and of the values, and talking about why, and just leading by example and uplifting those who are also doing the same, and just being consistent, just one foot in front of the other consistency, not changing things up. If things are getting tough, don't change your values, don't try to make big sweeping changes to the culture, just consistency. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, that is a great answer that I think goes beyond just the standard like lead by example, right? Because that's what you hear is just lead by example.
Yeah.
It's like, well, what does that mean? How does that show up? Because that can be different.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing some great examples. And I think to your point too, letting people show up that way and shining the light on them, but they're doing it in their own way. Like that's the coolest feeling.
It is. It really, really is, because it can be really lonely. I mean, you hear that all the time, and I don't think you fully experience how lonely it can be to be a founder or a CEO of a business. And then when you see cultures lived out loud by someone else on the team, it is the most, it'll bring tears to your eyes. Like it is the most, or you see people showing up for each other. It's not unlike being a parent watching your kids like do the right thing and like take care of each other. It's like, yes. That's what it's about. It's not about you and your ability to live by example. It's not about you and your ability to represent the values. It's about, can this transcend? And can the culture have its own life? Can the values take on their own life among this team? That's what it's about.
Yeah. Can this transcend? Yeah, that's a beautiful statement. I love that. At the end of the day, like if you were to remove, again, capitalism, you know where my brain is at. But if you were to remove that, we were truly living in the way that we were supposed to be living as humans. You tap into that connection and that love and what you actually can start feeling based on building those relationships and that collaboration. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, kind of tying together a few things that we've talked about so far. Like I am not here in this seat leading this company for money, ego, pride, status. I mean, we're all human beings. We all have certain elements of that. Absolutely. I'm not devoid of them. But like, that's not why I'm here. Like I'm here for connection. I'm here for relationships. I'm here because I believe truly that what we're doing has the ability to change the future of B2B marketing in the way that needs to happen. Like I'm here for the people and I'm here for the marketers. And I'm like, that's why I'm here. I'm here for, like you said, I'm here for love. I'm here for joy. I'm here for something so much more human. And I don't think people expect that. And then when they confront that, they will, and they being anyone, like anyone who comes face to face with you when that's true for you, they're like, I don't know if I trust that, because it's like, well, surely though, I don't know. Cause it's, you have to realize that if that's who you are, and if you can relate to that, people won't know what to do with that. And they won't always believe it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I definitely have gotten that where it's legit. Is this how you actually are? And it sucks because some people aren't. They show up online and then you meet them in person and you're like, oh, like that energy, that does not match what you were portraying. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that has to happen because then it does leave that question mark when you see the real thing, when you see somebody showing up authentically. There are times where you're like, I've been burned before. Yeah. I don't want to get burned again. Is legit.
Yep. And that's going back to the very beginning, top of this conversation about authenticity is that it's been such an overused word that people are like, it actually means the opposite now in so many situations. So it's unfortunate, but
yes. Yeah. And I would just like hope is not a strategy. Like authenticity is not a strategy. It is how you show up and it is how you live your life. And yeah. Thank you for putting a bow on that and bringing it back to the top. I love it.
You're welcome.
I know we are running out of time. It went by so fast, leaving us with a little bit of wisdom or advice. What would you recommend for the emerging leaders out there or the existing leaders who want to level up, want to show up more authentically? What should they be doing?
I spent a lot of time reading and listening to podcasts, surprisingly. Surprise, surprise. And audiobooks and things. And I think that those absolutely are incredible resources for growth. I still read a ton. I consume so much content. But I think if you really, really want to grow and get to that coming home point that you were talking about, journaling. I think for all of the input, all that we consume, you have to get some of it out. You have to think about how you're feeling. And I think especially for doers, like it's really hard for me to sit and think because, anybody who's tried to meditate, like you just start thinking about your to-do list. Just write about all the crap and all the wonderful things and the idea, and just get to the point. Just journal. And then if you ever feel stuck or if you ever feel stuck, go back and read some of what you've written and how far you've come and some of the ideas that you had and some of the things that have come to fruition and some that haven't, and some of the problems that you've worked your way out of. Journal. Do it.
Great advice, especially because, like what you said, when you're stuck, we're never really stuck. In that stillness and in your introspection, you find the way out.
Yeah. It's some of the greatest advice that I get from one of my friends. She's like, I'm like, I just don't know what to do. She's like, yes, you do. Yes, you do. You might need some time to let it come to the surface, but you know. So we know more than we think we know. We just need to give it the space to come to the surface.
Yeah, so true. Tap into it. You do. We have the answers. You all have the answers. Well, Lindsay, this has been lovely. I am so just happy to be connected and hear about your journey and have you come on and share, because it's definitely one that I think needs to be heard. And, also just we need to do a better job of elevating women in leadership, women founders, women CEOs. And I'm glad that you're part of that. Like, we get to fight alongside each other in that. And I appreciate you. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, this was so wonderful. Thank you for allowing this to be part of my day too. This was wonderful. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you walk away with something empowering that you can take into your own leadership journey. Are you a high-performing executive looking to take your career to the next level? Or maybe you're an emerging leader who wants to develop the skills you need to advance in your role and show up authentically. Or maybe you're experiencing burnout and struggling to find a better work-life balance. Whatever your situation is, one-on-one coaching can help you achieve your personal and professional goals. If you're interested in experiencing the power of coaching for yourself, head on over to hypehousecoaching.com/start coaching now, where you can set up a one-on-one leadership and executive coaching intro session for free. Remember, the only hype that really matters is the hype within.